Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we transform complex topics into clear, compelling insights. Today, we're plunging into the incredible saga of a family whose name is synonymous with power, wealth, and, well, a cultural revolution. The Medici.
And this wasn't just any rich family, right?
No, absolutely not. They were so profoundly impactful that they didn't merely bankroll the Renaissance, they arguably invented modern finance, meticulously reshaped the political landscape of an entire continent, and even inadvertently triggered a religious revolution that altered the very course of Christianity forever. Get ready to explore Florence, Italy, through their eyes.
Our mission today is really to unpack how this extraordinary Florentine dynasty rose from remarkably humble origins to become, quite literally, the godfathers of the Renaissance.
Yeah.
We'll meticulously trace their ascent, uncovering the surprising challenges and existential threats they faced, the sheer audacity of some of their most crucial gambles, and how their multifaceted influence continues to echo through the corridors of art, finance, and culture, even in our modern world.
And to do this, we're not just sifting through dusty old historical chronicles. We're drawing from a rich tapestry of historical accounts, uncovering fascinating, often surprising anecdotes, and even leveraging cutting-edge scientific investigations into their very bones to peel back the layers and reveal the true story behind the legends.
Really getting into the details.
Exactly. So prepare for some. In the early 15th century, the Medici began as fairly modest wool merchants and money changers in the bustling city-state of Florence. But it was Giovanni, born into what was described by contemporaries as rural poverty, who really began the arduous work of elevating their family's status.
Yeah, he combined an almost aggressive salesmanship, a relentless drive, with a remarkably shrewd financial caution to begin building what would become their immense fortunes. He was really laying the groundwork.
What's truly fascinating here is how the very language we use in finance today evolved directly from their early practices. Think about the term bank, for instance.
It originates from the Italian word banco, which quite literally means table or bench. This is where money traders, or banchieri, would set up their operations in the bustling market squares, sitting at these tables and calling out their best offers for exchanging currencies or making loans. Very physical.
And conversely, the term bankrupt has an even more dramatic origin. Bancarrota, meaning broken table.
Exactly. It was a stark, public reflection of the high-risk, volatile nature of this emerging business. When a banker failed, their table was ceremonially broken, signaling their financial ruin. This period truly marked the nascent stages of capitalism, and no family, arguably, prospered more from its development than the Medici.
But this prosperity came with a profound moral dilemma for the Medici, didn't it? They were, by all accounts, devout Christians, and the church at the time unequivocally condemned usury, the lending of money with interest, as a mortal sin.
Oh, absolutely. And this wasn't some minor theological debate for the average Florentine. The fear of eternal damnation, of their souls being condemned to hell, was a very real, palpable, and terrifying concern.
You can see this fear vividly depicted in the art of the era, such as Nardo di Cioni's chilling fresco in Santa Maria Novella Strozzi Chapel.
Right, it shows usurers in the agonizing depths of hell, suffering under a perpetual downpour of fire, their hands desperately and restlessly moving, unable to keep still.
Like counting invisible coins.
Precisely. It's a direct punishment for having done nothing productive with their hands in life, only accumulating wealth through sinful means. It was literally their worst nightmare made visible.
So what was their way out? How did they square that circle?
Well, their solution to this very real moral quandary was nothing short of ingenious. They began to quite literally buy salvation through lavish sponsorship of monumental works of art and architecture.
Patronage as penance.
In a way, yes. This practice allowed them to effectively transform their immense wealth, which was often viewed suspiciously, into unimpeachable prestige and immense political power. This act of patronage effectively offset the perceived taint of their profession.
So it wasn't just about piety, it was strategic.
Absolutely. Giovanni de' Medici himself, the patriarch, was deeply involved in commissioning Lorenzo Ghiberti's magnificent bronze doors for the Florence baptistry. These doors, which took Ghiberti over 2 decades to complete, featuring intricate biblical scenes, are considered a true masterpiece of early Renaissance art.
Incredible work.
And this initial foray into large-scale artistic patronage undoubtedly opened Giovanni's eyes, and those of the entire Medici family, to the immense untapped potential of art, not just as a spiritual salve, but as a powerful tool of influence and public legitimation.
So, with their foundational banking enterprise established and a surprisingly effective spiritual loophole discovered, Giovanni de' Medici, ever the shrewd opportunist, saw an even more colossal opportunity amidst the widespread chaos of the early 15th century. This was his papal gambit.
Right, Europe at the time was in profound turmoil, suffering from the Great Schism, effectively split by two rival popes. Gregory XII holding court in Rome, and Benedict XIII entrenched in Avignon.
Two popes, talk about a crisis.
Exactly. Each claimed to be the sole legitimate spiritual leader of Christendom, and each, in a display of ultimate religious power, excommunicated the other. It was Christendom, quite literally torn apart, deeply uncertain of its spiritual guidance.
Okay.
And here's where Giovanni de' Medici demonstrated his truly visionary and audacious nature. Most would see such religious chaos as an existential threat. But Giovanni, with his banker's mind, recognized it not as a problem, but as an unparalleled doorway to unprecedented influence and access.
Opportunity in crisis?
Precisely. He understood deeply that the true currency of power wasn't merely money, but direct access to the Vatican's immense wealth, its vast network of connections, and perhaps most importantly, its spiritual authority. His ambition was immense and calculated. If the Medici could successfully help install a new, powerful pope, it would catapult the family from being merely successful bankers to true power brokers, far beyond anything a humble Florentine banking house could ever achieve.
The stakes were astronomical.
Or so too was the potential reward. It was a huge leap.
And who did Giovanni pick for this utterly massive high-stakes gamble? None other than a former pirate named Baldassare Cosa.
Yes, you heard that right. A pirate who became a cardinal. Cosa had honed his cunning, his audacity, and his ruthlessness commanding ships in the often lawless waters of the Mediterranean Sea.
Wow.
Yet surprisingly, he later pursued canon law at the prestigious University of Bologna and, through a series of calculated maneuvers, ascended to the rank of cardinal.
Quite the career change.
Indeed. Giovanni de' Medici, with his keen eye for talent and opportunity, looked beyond Cosa's unconventional and certainly controversial past. He recognized the immense potential this alliance presented for the Medici Bank to gain unprecedented, even exclusive access to the Vatican's incredibly vast financial accounts.
So it was all about the money, ultimately, or access to it.
Access, influence, power. It was an enormous risk backing this guy, but one Giovanni was prepared to take for the future of his family.
And Giovanni's gamble began to pay off. With a substantial flow of Medici funds fueling his campaign, Cosa began to systematically buy loyalty among the cardinals.
Bribes flowed discreetly behind closed doors, promises were whispered in the shadows, and the intricate political machinery of the church began to shift decisively in his favor. It was classic power politics.
So when the highly anticipated conclave finally gathered in 1410,
Baldassare Cosa emerged victorious, crowned as Pope John the 23rd. However, this triumph was not without immediate complications. He was the third pope in an already fractured Christendom, an election that only deepened the Great Schism and plunged Europe into an even more unprecedented religious crisis.
3 popes, that must have been utter confusion.
It was. But for the Medici, despite the wider chaos, Cosa's election was a profound, almost miraculous triumph. Practically overnight, Giovanni de' Medici gained effective control of the Vatican's intricate financial accounts.
Just like that.
Pretty much. This astonishing feat tied the Medici name directly to the very heart of Christendom, elevating their status beyond imagination. While the three-pope crisis would eventually be resolved a few years later with the Council of Constance, which incidentally deposed all 3 popes and elected a new one, Martin V. The Medici's initial daring foothold in the Vatican remained. It cemented a permanent direct doorway into the Church's immense finances that would continue for generations, providing an almost inexhaustible source of capital and influence.
So they became God's bankers.
In essence, yes. From relatively obscure Florentine bankers, they had become, in a single stroke, major power brokers on the European stage. And that, as you can imagine, irrevocably changed everything for Florence and paved the way for the coming Renaissance.
So following Giovanni's remarkable groundwork and his strategic placement of the Medici within the Church's financial heart, the mantle of leadership passed to his eldest son, Cosimo de' Medici, in 1429.
Right. Giovanni, whose health began a slow decline in the late 1420s, had spent years meticulously grooming Cosimo. His son was a man known for his quiet intensity, his sharp intellect, and a deep education in humanist learning, which was quite progressive for the time.
So he was prepared?
Very much so. Giovanni's final, astute warning to his son, delivered just before his death, echoed through the corridors of power. Beware of going to the palace of government, wait to be summoned, do what you are asked to do, and never display any bright, always keep out of the public eye.
Interesting advice. Keep a low profile.
Exactly. It underscored the treacherous and highly competitive political landscape Cosimo would inevitably inherit. A landscape where overt ambition could be deadly.
And treacherous it certainly was. Cosimo immediately found himself embroiled in a deep-seated rivalry with the powerful Albizzi family, particularly with their ambitious leader, Rinaldo degli Albizzi.
Rinaldo saw Cosimo not just as a rival for influence in Florence, but as an existential threat to his family's long-standing control over the city.
So he had to go.
That was Rinaldo's thinking. Rinaldo, a cunning and ruthless politician, orchestrated a sophisticated plot. He rigged elections, fabricated charges of treason against Cosimo, and then, in a dramatic power play, ambushed and arrested him at the Palazzo della Signoria, Florence's seat of government.
Wow, brazen.
Cosimo was promptly imprisoned, and Rinaldo's intention was clear: to execute him and permanently remove the Medici threat.
But that didn't happen, did it?
No, the immediate execution of a man as profoundly wealthy and well-connected as Cosimo proved to be a risk even Rinaldo was unwilling to take. Instead, the ruling council, pressured by Cosimo's numerous allies and the sheer financial clout of the Medici Bank, chose the lesser punishment of exile, banishing him to Venice in 1433.
Venice, so Rinaldo thought he'd won.
He did. He gravely underestimated Cosimo's strategic brilliance. For Cosimo, this exile was not a defeat, but a temporary setback, a calculated strategic retreat. From Venice, he meticulously and patiently rebuilt his extensive network of alliances, leveraging his family's vast wealth and his own diplomatic acumen.
Playing the long game.
Exactly. Meanwhile, back in Florence, Rinaldo's rule faltered disastrously. He plunged the city into expensive, unpopular wars that drained the treasury and implemented poor economic policies that severely frustrated the powerful merchant class, who were the backbone of Florence's economy.
So things went south without Cosimo.
Pretty quickly. By 1434, the tide had unequivocally turned. Florence, weary of Albizzi's increasingly authoritarian and incompetent rule, eagerly invited Cosimo back. He returned triumphantly, not as a disgraced exile, but as a beloved redeemer, greeted by cheering crowds, solidifying his return as a heroic moment in Florentine history.
What a comeback. So once back in Florence, Cosimo wasted absolutely no time consolidating his power, but he did so with an almost invisible touch, didn't he, following his father's advice?
Precisely. He shrewdly reshaped Florence's governance, all the while meticulously maintaining a republican facade. He never took on an official title. He carefully avoided public displays of absolute power. Yet, behind the scenes, there was no doubt. He was undeniably calling the shots.
Ruling from the shadows.
Essentially, he established a sophisticated yet subtle system of patronage and informal influence, ensuring his loyalists held key positions while appearing to respect traditional institutions. This cunning approach established a unique blueprint for how to truly rule without ever appearing to rule, making his power almost unassailable because it was so difficult to directly challenge.
Smart. And this quiet but absolute consolidation of power provided the unshakable foundation for Cosimo's truly grand vision, transforming Florence into the undisputed cultural and intellectual heart of Europe, a city that embodied art, intellect, and profound civic pride.
Yes, his patronage was not merely an aesthetic pursuit or a personal hobby. It was a calculated long-term political strategy. He poured genuinely massive sums into art and architecture, an astonishing 600,000 golden florins.
600,000, how much was that relative?
It was, to put it into perspective, 6 times the Florentine state's total annual income.
Wow, that's unbelievable investment.
It was. This was wealth intentionally transformed into an entirely new kind of currency. Prestige, legitimacy, and ultimately absolute political power. By investing in the city's beauty and intellect, he was investing in the Medici's enduring legacy and influence.
And the crowning jewel of Cosimo's patronage, literally towering over the entire city, was the dome of Florence Cathedral.
Ah, Brunelleschi's dome. For over a century, this massive, unfinished dome had loomed over Florence, a glaring symbol of architectural ambition that had repeatedly failed. Its sheer size was daunting, defying all known building techniques.
So along comes Filippo Brunelleschi.
A self-taught genius who, against all odds, took on this unprecedented challenge. Brunelleschi's vision was revolutionary, resurrecting forgotten classical concepts and combining them with entirely new engineering principles.
Wasn't there a story about an egg?
Yes, He famously demonstrated his genius by challenging authorities to stand an egg on its end. When they failed, he simply cracked the bottom of the egg and it stood up. His point being, the solution would seem obvious after he revealed his meticulous plans.
Clever. And the solution itself.
Brunelleschi's solution for the dome was a true marvel of engineering, incorporating innovative features like a clever double skin, an inner and outer shell that distributed the immense weight more effectively, and a unique herringbone design for the brickwork.
Herringbone?
Yeah, where bricks were laid in a zigzag pattern, increasing stability and preventing them from falling inward during construction. It was ingenious.
And the completion in 1436.
It's an utterly monumental feat. It remained the largest unsupported dome in Christendom for centuries. It stood as irrefutable proof that man, through intellect and ingenuity, could conquer the seemingly impossible, a magnificent symbol of Florentine pride and a direct, towering mirror to the Medici's own seemingly impossible rise. Just the scale. 37,000 tons, 4 million bricks. Staggering.
Truly. But Cosimo didn't stop with the grandest architectural statement. He also commissioned Donatello's bronze sculpture of David.
Ah, yes, the David. Quite revolutionary, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It was the first freestanding nude sculpture since classical Roman times, a daring return to classical forms. Its sensuality, evident in the almost provocative long feather-caressing David's eye, was highly controversial in a city that, ironically, was heavily associated with sodomy.
Right, thousands were tried for it, so this was pushing boundaries.
Definitely. This commission showcased Cosimo's audacious willingness to take immense risks and give artists unparalleled freedom for new ideas, even those that directly challenged or appeared to be outside the orthodoxy of the Catholic Church. He understood that true innovation often meant pushing uncomfortable boundaries.
And he also funded an entire monastery, San Marco.
Another truly unprecedented act of private patronage, demonstrating Cosimo's deep strategic thinking. He funded the entire San Marco monastery for the austere Dominican order. This wasn't just a simple donation. He commissioned separate, private cells for the friars, each adorned with contemplative frescoes by Fra Angelico, providing an ideal environment for spiritual devotion.
Very generous.
And shrewd. In a remarkably clever display of his banker's mindset, he even secured his own pardon for sins in writing from none other than Pope Eugenius IV, essentially laundering his family's immense wealth into tangible salvation and spiritual legitimacy.
A pardon in writing. The banker's touch.
Indeed. And perhaps the most audacious, almost brazen display of Medici power and wealth was the Chapel of the Magi in Cosimo's private Palazzo Medici.
Ah, the Gazzoli frescoes.
Exactly. Painted by Benozzo Gazzoli, it was, as one historian described it, an orgy of self-congratulation. It boldly depicted the Medici family and their most powerful allies inserted directly into a biblical scene, parading their wealth and power for all to see.
Not exactly subtle.
Not at all. It was, quite frankly, a pictorial version of counting your money, a flamboyant celebration of the sheer naked joy of capitalism, showcasing their worldly triumph.
What an audacious statement of power, wasn't it? Beyond these incredible artistic and architectural statements, Cosimo meticulously had his eye on expanding their financial empire.
Absolutely. Under his leadership, the Medici Bank expanded internationally, establishing profitable branches from bustling Barcelona to the ancient city of Cairo. They became absolutely crucial in collecting money for the church across Europe, leveraging the terrifying threat of excommunication to ensure prompt payments from reluctant debtors.
Using the church's power for their gain.
It was a symbiotic relationship. The Pope himself, recognizing their financial prowess and strategic importance, even opened a colossal credit line with the Medici, effectively making their bank the most profitable and influential business in all of Europe.
So by the time of Cosimo's death in 1464,
Florence had undeniably been transformed into the cultural and intellectual heart of Europe, and he was posthumously and famously declared Pater Patriae, the father of the fatherland, a remarkable legacy.
Now, following Cosimo the Elder's death, the mantle of Medici leadership fell to his son, Piero di Cosimo de' Medici. But Piero, unfortunately, was plagued by chronic illness, wasn't he?
Yes, a debilitating gout that earned him the infamous nickname Piero the Gouty. His reign was short, marked by ill health and limited influence. By 1469, at just 53, he succumbed to his ailments, leaving the powerful Medici dynasty at a precarious crossroads.
Leaving his son Lorenzo in charge at only 20.
Exactly. And this combination of youth and apparent inexperience was immediately perceived as a profound weakness by the Medici's numerous rivals and enemies within Florence and beyond. Many saw it as an opportunity to finally unseat the powerful family.
But Lorenzo surprised them.
He absolutely did. Lorenzo quickly demonstrated an astonishing aptitude for leadership, far beyond his years, seamlessly stepping into the role of Florence's de facto ruler. He quickly earned the affectionate and respectful title of the Maestro della Bottega, or boss of the shop.
The boss of the shop. I like that.
And it's quite arguable that, under his guidance, all of Florence truly became Lorenzo's shop, managed with extraordinary skill and vision.
This perceived vulnerability, however, invited a deadly and infamous plot. The Pacassi conspiracy of 1478.
Ah, yes, a dark chapter. This was a meticulously planned, high-stakes assassination attempt orchestrated by the rival Pazzi family, another powerful Florentine banking clan who had long envied and resented the Medici's unparalleled influence.
And they weren't alone, were they? The Pope was involved.
That's right. They were covertly supported by none other than Pope Sixtus IV, who harbored a deep resentment towards Lorenzo for his steadfast refusal to finance papal ambitions. The audacious plot unfolded on April 26, 1478, during High Mass at Florence Cathedral.
In the cathedral itself.
During Mass.
Unbelievably sacrilegious. As the host elevated the host, the conspirators made their move. Giuliano de' Medici, Lorenzo's beloved younger brother, was brutally stabbed 19 times and died instantly. Lorenzo, though wounded in the shoulder, managed to escape the church with the help of loyal supporters and took refuge in the sacristy.
19 times. Horrific. And Lorenzo escaped. He did. The city immediately erupted in a mix of chaos and furious outrage. The conspirators had foolishly hoped to seize control of the government in the ensuing confusion, but their plan unraveled spectacularly.
So people sided with the Medici.
Overwhelmingly. Lorenzo's extensive network of allies and the sheer outpouring of public support for the Medici quickly rallied the city. The Pazzi leaders and their co-conspirator, Archbishop Salviati, were swiftly captured. In a gruesome public display, they were hanged from the windows of the Palazzo della Signoria.
A very public execution.
A stark and brutal warning. Challenging the Medici, particularly Lorenzo, would lead to swift and merciless consequences. Lorenzo emerged from this existential crisis not weakened, as his enemies had hoped, but remarkably strengthened, transformed into a symbol of Florentine resilience and universally hailed by the grateful people as Il Magnifico, the Magnificent.
And he truly lived up to that moniker. Lorenzo swiftly and decisively consolidated his control, but again, with that characteristic Medici subtlety.
Yes. He established a new council of 70 loyalists, effectively sidelining the traditional governing bodies and creating an oligarchy that remained firmly under his thumb, all while meticulously maintaining that carefully crafted Republican facade.
So still not officially in charge, but pulling all the strings.
Exactly. He was a political genius, masterful in his use of patronage and power. He skillfully manipulated taxes to reward his friends, systematically weaken his rivals, and fund large-scale public projects that kept the common people content and loyal.
And that trip to Naples, that sounds incredibly risky.
Perhaps the most daring display of his diplomatic skill. His solitary journey to Naples, a daring gamble with his own life, to negotiate a peace treaty with his enemies, including King Ferrante. His personal charm, his acute political skill, and, let's not forget, the strategic deployment of hard cash convinced the enemy troops to stand down, further solidifying his formidable reputation as a peacemaker and a shrewd negotiator.
Incredible nerve. With his political power firmly secured and his reputation cemented, Lorenzo turned his considerable attention to elevating Florence's cultural identity to unprecedented heights.
Yes, his extensive patronage of the arts became known as magnificentia, the virtuous and strategic spending of money for the greater good and glory of the city. This wasn't charity, it was a powerful political strategy where Lorenzo's mere word could single-handedly make or break an artistic career.
So artists flocked to him.
They did. Artists flocked to Florence, knowing that Medici patronage offered not just financial support, but unparalleled creative freedom.
This philosophy allowed for an incredible flourishing of artistic genius. Lorenzo became the principal patron of Sandro Botticelli, an artist who played a crucial role in crafting a powerful Medici myth through his work.
Right, like his painting The Adoration of the Magi, which explicitly placed the Medici family, including Lorenzo himself, Giuliano, and Cosimo the Elder, right at the heart of the nativity scene, glorifying them and intertwining their lineage with sacred history.
Very direct propaganda.
But it was Botticelli's more radical and daring works, La Primavera and The Birth of Venus, that truly pushed the boundaries of artistic expression. These masterpieces celebrated human desire, drew heavily from pagan mythology, and were imbued with themes of fertility, showcasing the extraordinary free reign Lorenzo allowed for new artistic spirits.
Even if they were pagan themes outside the church's usual scope.
Especially then. It showed he fostered an environment where artistic experimentation was not just tolerated, but actively encouraged.
Perhaps Lorenzo's most celebrated discovery, and a testament to his keen eye for talent, was a mere 13-year-old Michelangelo Buonarroti.
An amazing story. Lorenzo, recognizing the boy's prodigious talent, established what was arguably the first true art school in history within the gardens of his Palazzo Medici. Here, he provided classical sculptures for study, allowing young artists to immerse themselves in antiquity.
He basically adopted Michelangelo.
Pretty much. Michelangelo was swiftly brought into the Medici household, given his own rooms, and crucially, exposed to the cutting-edge humanist theories and classical antiquity at Lorenzo's very dinner table. This intellectual and artistic immersion profoundly shaped his early works.
Like the Madonna of the Stairs and the Battle of the Centaurs.
Exactly. From the deeply religious to the purely classical and secular Battle of the Centaurs, a powerful dynamic piece showing human struggle and often cited as representing the birth of Western European secular art, liberated from purely religious themes.
He supported Leonardo da Vinci, too.
Lorenzo also famously encouraged and supported Leonardo da Vinci, whose insatiable curiosity and boundless genius flourished under Medici patronage. This fertile environment led to Leonardo's groundbreaking sketches of flying machines, his meticulous human dissections that revolutionized anatomical understanding, and of course his unparalleled art that brilliantly blended scientific observation with artistic mastery.
Just an explosion of creativity. Beyond individual artists, Lorenzo's architectural ambitions extended to the Tuscan countryside with the magnificent Villa Poggio a Caiano.
A truly revolutionary classical retreat. Its classical arcade and grand entrance embodied aristocratic indulgence, with frescoes like Pontormo's Vertumnus and Pomona transporting viewers directly to ancient myths, depicting figures from classical mythology rather than Christian saints.
Almost like a pagan temple.
It was almost a pagan prayer for fertility and prosperity, implicitly yet powerfully stating, we don't really need God anymore. We've got our own gods now, the gods of art, and we are their patrons. A bold statement.
Yet, while Lorenzo's world flourished culturally in this magnificent way, his personal grip on the family business, the once unshakable Medici Bank, began to seriously loosen.
Yes, that's the shadow side. Several branches of the Medici Bank, which had been the family's bedrock, collapsed under his less rigorous management, and he personally lost a significant fortune through mismanagement and lavish spending.
So the foundation was cracked.
The financial foundation. Yes, this financial strain forced the family to increasingly rely more on their political power and influence than on their dwindling banking wealth. This shift laid the groundwork for future vulnerabilities.
This financial strain and the growing perception of Medici decadence opened the door for the rise of a stark and formidable contrast. Girolamo Savonarola.
Savonarola. He was a Dominican friar with what was often described as a one-note personality of intensely moralizing fanaticism. Savonarola genuinely believed that Lorenzo's opulent reign was leading Florence down a path of spiritual downfall and moral corruption.
So the anti-Medici.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He relentlessly railed against what he saw as the vanity of Renaissance art, the greed of bankers, and the undeniable decadence of the ruling class, fiercely targeting the Medici as the very embodiment of all that was sinful and leading Florence astray from true Christian piety.
And then Lorenzo's son Piero took over in 1492. Piero the Unfortunate, they called him.
Yes, and unfortunately the name fits. His profound lack of diplomatic finesse and strategic acumen proved disastrous. His rapid and humiliating capitulation to the invading French King Charles VIII, surrendering Florentine territories without a fight, absolutely enraged the Florentine public, who saw it as an act of cowardice and betrayal.
So he was kicked out.
Summarily forced to flee Florence, leaving the city without Medici leadership for the first time in decades, creating a profound power vacuum.
Which Savonarola filled.
Immediately, he seized this momentous opportunity. He declared King Charles VIII an instrument of God's wrath, sent to punish Florence for its sins, and he swiftly established a radical theocratic government in Florence. This was to be a new Jerusalem, ruled by strict moral laws and religious fervor.
And the infamous bonfire of the vanities.
His most notorious act? Chillingly known public burnings, where thousands of secular objects, books deemed immoral, Pagan figurines, elaborate wigs, cosmetics, extravagant jewelry, and even some of Botticelli's own paintings were thrown into towering flames.
Botticelli burned his own work.
It's believed so, caught up in the fervor. This was Florence's fervent, desperate search for salvation, but to many observers it became in many ways a terrifying vision of hell, a stark rejection of the very Renaissance ideals the Medici had championed.
And in a deeply poignant and dramatic moment, as Lorenzo the Magnificent lay dying in 1492, at the relatively young age of 43, consumed by his final illness, he desperately called for Savonarola to his deathbed.
Right, seeking above all else absolution for his sins before facing divine judgment. But Savonarola's judgment was famously harsh and unyielding. He damned Lorenzo, refusing to grant him absolution unless he surrendered Florence to God and restored its republican liberty.
Which Lorenzo couldn't do.
No. Lorenzo died, as chronicles record, fearing hell to his last breath, a tragic end for a man who had brought so much earthly glory to Florence.
And Savonarola himself didn't last long either, did he?
No, his zealous rule was short-lived. He eventually defied papal authority, was excommunicated and publicly executed in 1498, his ashes scattered to prevent any veneration. But his profound impact underscored the volatile and often deadly intertwining of faith, morality, and political power in Renaissance Florence.
What a dramatic and powerful turning point in the Medici narrative. Piero may have inadvertently caused the temporary collapse of their power in Florence, but the ever-resilient Medici were about to reclaim their influence from an entirely different and even more exalted place.
Exactly. Remember, Lorenzo the Magnificent had shrewdly groomed his younger son, Giovanni, for the church from childhood. At just 13 years old, Giovanni was strategically appointed cardinal.
13? That's incredibly young.
It was. This wasn't merely personal ambition, it was, as one astute source aptly puts it, a masterful game of generational chess. Lorenzo was deliberately embedding the Medici bloodline directly into the very heart of the Vatican, ensuring long-term systemic influence for the family far beyond the borders of Florence.
Playing the long game again?
And this profound foresight paid off handsomely. In 1513, after years of patient, calculated diplomacy and strategic alliances, Giovanni's moment of destiny arrived with the death of Pope Julius II. Leveraging his immense family wealth and their vast network of connections, Giovanni meticulously secured enough support among the cardinals to be elected Pope Leo X.
So he basically bought the papacy.
It was whispered in the corridors of power that he didn't merely win the papacy. He quite literally purchased it through a combination of bribes, promises, and shrewd political maneuvering. He thus became the first Medici to ascend to the highest spiritual office in Christendom, a testament to their enduring power and ambition.
And what a papacy it was. Pope Leo X's reign was absolutely defined by extraordinary lavishness and an almost unrestrained pursuit of pleasure.
Oh, completely. He treated the papacy not just as a spiritual office, but as his personal stage, pouring vast sums of money into extravagant vanity projects, opulent festivals, and the truly massive reconstruction of St. Peter's Basilica, which had begun under his predecessor.
Commissioning Raphael and Michelangelo.
Absolutely. He saw every opportunity as a chance to flaunt the Medici name in all its newly acquired glory, intertwining it with the very fabric of the Holy See.
But all that spending must have cost a fortune.
It did. This kind of unrestrained, extravagant spending inevitably left the Vatican treasury nearly bankrupt. To desperately raise more money, Pope Leo X significantly ramped up the controversial sale of indulgences payments made to the Church in exchange for forgiveness of sins, promising reduced time in purgatory.
Ah, indulgences, the trigger point.
Exactly. This desperate financial measure was intended to refill the empty coffers, but it inadvertently ignited a devastating fire that would burn through the very heart of Christianity itself. Martin Luther, a devout German monk and theologian, was among those profoundly outraged by what he perceived as this blatant corruption and commodification of salvation.
And he wrote the 95 Theses.
In October 1517, in an act of profound defiance and conviction, he famously penned his 95 Theses, a scathing critique of indulgences and widespread church corruption, and according to tradition, bravely nailed them to the door of the Wittenberg Church, sparking a theological and political powder keg.
And Leo's reaction?
Pope Leo X, unfortunately, notoriously dismissed Luther as little more than a minor troublemaker, a mere monastic squabble, famously failing to grasp the true magnitude of the growing threat to his authority and the very structure of the Church.
A massive underestimation.
Huge. His ignorance, or perhaps his overconfidence, had truly devastating, unforeseen consequences, directly sparking the Protestant Reformation, a religious schism that would fundamentally reshape Christianity and indeed the entire geopolitical landscape of Europe for centuries to come.
And even then, he was still focused on Medici power.
Despite this looming catastrophic crisis, Leo X remained remarkably focused on consolidating Medici power, securing the appointment of his young nephew, Giulio de' Medici, as cardinal, desperately hoping he too would one day ascend to the papacy. However, Leo X died suddenly in December 1521 at just 46, leaving the Vatican in utter financial chaos and a spiritual landscape in turmoil.
So enter Giulio. But not immediately, right? There was another pope first.
Right. Following Leo X's sudden demise, the papacy was briefly held by a devout and austere reformer, Adrian VI, who sought to curb the excesses that had become common. But Adrian's mysterious and short-lived reign ended with his death just 2 years later, opening the door once more for Giulio de' Medici.
So Giulio got his chance.
He did. Leveraging his considerable diplomatic skill, his extensive network of connections, and undoubtedly the surviving Medici wealth, Giulio meticulously rallied support and was triumphantly crowned Pope Clement VII in 1523, thus restoring Medici power to the Vatican's highest office.
And he put his son in charge of Florence.
Confident in his position, yes, he then installed his illegitimate son, Alessandro de' Medici, as the unquestioned head of Florence. The Medici, it seemed, were once again at the very pinnacle of their power, seemingly unassailable.
But Clement VII's reign was anything but stable. He inherited a Europe caught in a maelstrom of political and religious upheaval.
Absolutely. He was trapped precariously between the rising tide of Protestant reformers to the north and the constant warring of powerful Catholic monarchs vying for supremacy. At the very center of this storm was the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V.
A major power player.
Huge. His burgeoning power and ambition threatened to dominate all of Italy and, by extension, the papacy itself. Clement, consumed by a profound fear of Charles V's overwhelming control, made a truly disastrous miscalculation.
What did he do?
He abruptly switched his allegiance from Charles V and aligned instead with France in the League of Cognac, a move that would prove utterly catastrophic.
Uh-oh. How did Charles react?
Charles V, a man of immense power and ruthless determination, retaliated with brutal and swift force. On May 6, 1527, his vast imperial army, composed of disgruntled, unpaid, and religiously zealous mercenaries, descended upon Rome.
The sack of Rome.
Exactly. The city, poorly defended and caught entirely off guard, fell almost instantly. What followed was one of the darkest and most horrifying moments in Vatican history. Months of unfettered ravaging, systematic looting of churches, the destruction of priceless Renaissance treasures, and the indiscriminate massacre of thousands of innocent citizens.
Horrific. And Pope Clement VII himself barely escaped with his life, managing to take refuge in the formidable Castel San Angelo. For the Medici, this was not just a profound blow to the papacy. It was a devastating and terrifying warning that their grip on power, long intertwined with the Vatican, was fundamentally slipping, and the consequences of political misjudgment were dire beyond imagination. And their hold on Florence continued to slip dramatically. After the humiliation of the sack of Rome, Pope Clement VII, still reeling, installed his illegitimate son, Alessandro de' Medici, as the new head of Florence.
Right. The hope was to stabilize the city under direct Medici rule. However, Alessandro's rule quickly degenerated into a brutal and paranoid tyranny. He systematically crushed dissent with a heavy hand, resorting to executions and exiles for any perceived opposition, swiftly earning him a chilling reputation as a ruler feared rather than respected, an autocrat who valued obedience above all else.
Not a popular guy, then.
Not at all. His enemies, however, continued to multiply and scheme in the shadows. In a dramatic turn of events in 1537, they struck. Alessandro was famously assassinated by his own distant cousin, Lorenzino de' Medici.
Lorenzaccio, the bad Lorenzino.
Exactly. He lured Alessandro into a private meeting under the false pretense of a secret romantic affair. Alessandro was stabbed to death, ending his ruthless and unpopular reign and plunging Florence once more into profound chaos with no clear successor to guide the city.
So another power vacuum. Who stepped in this time?
In this unexpected and dangerous power vacuum, an unlikely figure rose to prominence, Cosimo I de' Medici. Born in 1519, he was a relatively distant Medici relative, largely raised in obscurity in the Tuscan countryside, far from the intrigues of court.
So not the immediate line.
No. At just 17 years old, he was chosen by Florence's ruling elites as the next head of the family. They viewed him as a seemingly weak ruler they could easily manipulate, a figurehead to control.
But they were wrong.
Fundamentally and spectacularly wrong. He moved with astonishing speed and ruthlessness to dismantle Republican factions, crushing attempted coups with an iron fist and meticulously building a fiercely loyal personal guard and administration. He systematically replaced unreliable nobles with his own loyalists, reshaping the entire government in his image, consolidating power, and governing with truly absolute authority.
So he wasn't a puppet at all.
Far from it. His ambition wasn't limited to internal governance. It extended significantly to military conquest and territorial expansion. In 1555, he launched a brutal 15-month siege of the rival city-state of Siena, with crucial backing from his powerful Spanish allies.
Taking Siena.
He starved the city into utter submission, ruthlessly absorbing it into his rapidly expanding domain. His relentless efforts and strategic brilliance were eventually rewarded in 1569 when Pope Pius V, recognizing his consolidation of power and loyalty to the Church, formally granted him the prestigious title of Grand Duke of Tuscany.
Grand Duke, that's a big step up.
Huge. This was a sovereign-level title, just one step below a king, transforming the Medici from mere influential bankers into true hereditary monarchs, a remarkable culmination of their centuries-long struggle for legitimate political power.
And Cosimo I also supported science. Galileo.
Yes, he made undeniably significant contributions beyond politics and warfare, particularly in the realm of science. He notably supported the brilliant astronomer Galileo Galilei, providing him with patronage and crucial protection from the formidable power of the Inquisition, allowing Galileo to pursue his groundbreaking, often controversial, scientific research.
Protecting Galileo, that's important.
It fostered a spirit of intellectual curiosity that pushed the boundaries of knowledge in Florence. However, as Cosimo's health began to decline in his later years, his son Francesco I succeeded him.
And Francesco wasn't quite up to par.
Sadly, no. Francesco lacked his father's unwavering vision, his strategic discipline, and his sheer strength of character, leading to an increase in corruption and a gradual, yet noticeable waning of Medici influence and effective governance.
But the Medici bloodline was about to wield more power than ever before, not within the familiar confines of Italy, but in the grand, tumultuous court of France. This time, this unprecedented level of influence would come from a woman, Catherine de' Medici.
Ah, Catherine. Born into the very heart of Florentine politics and power, Catherine was tragically treated as little more than a political pawn from a very young age. She was even held hostage in a convent for 3 traumatic years after the Medici temporarily lost control of Florence in 1527 during the sack of Rome.
3 years as a hostage, that must have shaped her.
Absolutely. This deeply formative and harrowing experience, however, didn't break her. Instead, it forged a resilient, calculating personality that would serve her well in the future.
And Pope Clement VII arranged her marriage.
Yes, determined to secure Medici influence beyond the Italian peninsula, strategically arranged Catherine's marriage at the tender age of 14 to Prince Henry, the second son of the powerful King Francis I of France.
So she goes to France. What was her life like there initially?
For years, Catherine found herself largely sidelined, silent, watching, waiting in the French court, often ignored by her husband Henry, even after he unexpectedly became King Henry II in 1547 following the death of his elder brother. She remained patient, observing the intricate dance of power.
Waiting for her chance.
And then in 1559, fate intervened in a truly absurd and utterly tragic way. A splintered lance pierced Henry's helmet during a jousting accident, leading to his agonizing death.
A jousting accident killed the king.
Totally absurd, but true. This sudden, unexpected event instantly thrust Catherine, who had previously been a marginalized figure, into the very center of French power.
So she takes charge.
She immediately seized the moment with remarkable acumen and ruthlessness, rising as regent for her underage sons, first Francis II and then Charles IX. She became queen in all but name, skillfully dominating the notoriously treacherous French court for decades.
Queen regent, the ultimate Medici power play, maybe.
This extraordinary ascent marked, as our sources highlight, the ultimate triumph for the Medici name, extending their reach to one of Europe's most powerful monarchies. Catherine displayed immense strategic political intelligence, adeptly attempting to balance the warring Protestant Huguenots and the entrenched Catholic nobility, famously playing them against each other to protect the vulnerable monarchy and consolidate her own power.
dangerous game.
Extremely. Her rule, however, was indelibly marked by profound brutality and cunning. The infamous St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572, a dark stain on French history, saw thousands of Protestant leaders and citizens slaughtered in Paris and across France.
Thousands killed. Horrific.
While this horrific event did secure Catholic dominance and arguably protected the Valois monarchy in the short term, it permanently branded Catherine as a ruthless queen in the eyes of history.
And her power eventually faded.
Her grip on power gradually declined, with her third son, Henry III, on the throne as he struggled to assert his own authority. Catherine herself died in 1589, just months before the final collapse of the Valois dynasty and the tragic assassination of her son. Her legacy, stained in blood and political maneuvering, marked a truly formidable end for a ruler who had achieved the greatest heights for the Medici name, even as their fortunes back in Florence began to truly wane.
So after nearly 300 years of unprecedented influence, the Medici dynasty back in Italy began its undeniable, slow decline.
Yes, while the Medici Grand Dukes of Tuscany continued to hold power for another century after Catherine's dramatic reign in France, their strength and influence were undeniably a shadow of what it once was. The formidable banking empire that had given them their very start was long gone, and their political influence within Italy and on the broader European stage weakened significantly, becoming increasingly localized and less impactful.
And the later rulers weren't as effective.
No, they became progressively more detached from the practicalities of governance, more indulgent in their personal lives, and tragically, utterly incapable of securing their future through effective administration or, crucially, through the production of legitimate male heirs.
The lack of heirs, that's often the killer for dynasties.
It was the fatal blow to the dynasty here. By 1737, the last Medici ruler, Gian Gaston de Medici, died without a direct male heir, extinguishing the main branch of the family. This led directly to Florence, falling under the control of the Austrian Empire, marking the definitive, ignominious end of the Medici's nearly 300-year direct rule over Florence and Tuscany.
The end of an era. But the story of the Medici doesn't entirely end there with their political decline. Modern science has allowed us to unearth entirely new secrets, literally from their graves, about this legendary family.
Yes, this is fascinating. In a truly groundbreaking endeavor, an international team of scientists was given unprecedented permission to open the crypt of the Medici in the Church of San Lorenzo in Florence, utilizing cutting-edge scientific techniques to examine the remains.
Must have been challenging, though, especially after the 1966 flood.
Exactly. The excavation presented significant and immediate challenges. Not least among them was the devastating Arno flood, which had submerged the crypt under 5 feet of water and mud, causing immense damage by dissolving bones and soft tissues. Yet the dedicated team pressed on, hoping to solve long-standing historical mysteries.
Like the murder rumor about Cosimosio's sons, Giovanni and Garzia.
Precisely. That particularly enduring 400-year-old rumor. The chilling story claimed that Giovanni had been stabbed to death by his own brother, Garzia, and then, in a fit of enraged grief and vengeance, Garzia was immediately killed by their father, Cosimo I. A real family tragedy, if true.
So what did the science find? What about Giovanni's bones?
The scientific findings were quite remarkable. Giovanni's bones, belonging to a 19-year-old at the time of his death, were nearly complete and robust, indicating a strong, athletic young man who enjoyed hunting. The team found clear evidence of a massive infection in one of his teeth, which would have been incredibly painful.
But not the cause of death. Any signs of stabbing?
No, crucially, absolutely no cut marks on his ribs or sternum, where a fatal stabbing would most likely occur. Interestingly, his manubrium, the upper part of the breastbone, was missing, likely due to post-mortem damage or the flood.
And Garcia, the supposed killer.
Garcia's bones from a 16-year-old were separated due to his youth, but were absolutely clean, showing no evidence of violence, no cut marks from a sword or any other weapon. Analysis of his bones did, however, show growth arrest lines, indicating he had suffered from chronic childhood illnesses.
So no murder.
The comprehensive physical evidence from both skeletons emphatically refutes the sensational murder theory that had persisted for centuries. The scientific team concluded with high confidence that both brothers likely died of natural causes, specifically malaria, a rampant disease in Tuscany at the time.
Malaria. And didn't the doctor warn Cosimo?
Yes. This conclusion was strikingly supported by historical records, as the family physician had indeed warned Cosimo not to take the boys to an area where malaria was known to be raging. This groundbreaking discovery effectively rewrote this little slice of history, transforming the perception of the Medici not as a family prone to murderous internal feuds, but as a loving family suffering an immense and tragic loss due to disease.
That's incredible. What about their mother, Eleanor de Toledo?
They also meticulously examined her remains. Her skeleton revealed she was a small woman, under 5 feet tall, but physically incredibly tough. Her bones showed traumatic changes to her pelvis, a clear indication of the immense physical toll of bearing 11 children in 14 years.
11 children. Wow.
She tragically died at the young age of 40, most likely from tuberculosis, a conclusion strongly supported by portraits from her last year that depict her as visibly thinning and pale, consistent with the disease's progression.
And Cosimo I himself. Any surprises there?
Perhaps the biggest shock and one of the most intriguing findings came from Cosimo I's own skull. It was found, surprisingly, in 2 parts. This wasn't the result of violence, but rather an early attempt at embalming, where the brain was crudely removed to preserve the body, a common, albeit rough, practice in that era, leaving only the skull bones.
So they basically took his brain out.
It appears so. His overall skeleton revealed he was a strong, athletic, full of energy individual in life, capable of leading his armies. However, he suffered from DISH, or diffuse idiopathic skeletal hyperostosis.
Dish. What's that?
It's a condition where ligaments and bone tissue fuse along the spine, leading to stiffness and significant difficulty bending in old age, a detail that humanizes the powerful Grand Duke. These incredible scientific insights bring a new, intimate dimension to their remarkable human story.
Absolutely fascinating. Despite their eventual political and financial decline, the Medici's cultural impact proved truly immortal, thanks in large part to the last heir, right? Anna Maria Luisa.
Yes, Anna Maria Luisa de' Medici, the last Medici heir, understanding the profound value of her family's artistic treasures, made an incomparable and selfless gesture. She bequeathed the family's entire vast art collection to Florence,
The Uffizi, the Pitti Palace, everything.
including iconic institutions like the Uffizi Gallery, the Boboli Gardens, the Palazzo Medici, and the Medici Chapel, with the incredibly significant proviso that it would never be removed from the city. This ensured that their unparalleled legacy would be permanently celebrated and remembered through the ages, truly immortalizing their name and their profound impact on art.
An incredible gift to the world.
The Medici were, without a doubt, architects of the modern world in ways that continue to surprise us. Their influence is profound and widespread, touching almost every aspect of society. In art and architecture, they were instrumental in shaping the very core of the Renaissance, from their foundational role in the reconstruction of St. Peter's Basilica to the completion of Florence Cathedral's magnificent dome.
Their patronage shaped everything.
Their unparalleled patronage of geniuses like Donatello, Michelangelo, and Leonardo quite literally liberated art from its purely religious constraints, transforming it into an obsession, a narcotic, a pursuit for beauty and truth in its own right.
And their impact on finance simply cannot be overstated. They didn't just bankroll the burgeoning Renaissance, they innovated and pioneered foundational concepts.
Exactly. They developed double-entry bookkeeping, which provided a revolutionary method for systematically tracking assets and liabilities, essential for managing complex international transactions. They introduced the concept of letters of credit, which allowed merchants to travel without physically transporting vast sums of gold, dramatically reducing risk and facilitating global trade.
Things we take for granted now.
Pretty much. They even developed early forms of holding company structures, laying the very bedrock for modern finance and international banking.
And in science, their contributions are also remarkable. We mentioned Galileo.
Yes, they actively supported pioneering figures like Galilei, ensuring cadavers for anatomists to advance medical understanding, and fostering an environment of intellectual curiosity that pushed the boundaries of knowledge itself. Politically, they engineered an extraordinary transition from powerful bankers to legitimate hereditary monarchs, mastering the intricate art of power and governance and influencing the highest echelons of the church and European royalty, a testament to their adaptability and ambition.
In essence, the Medici mastered what we can truly call the art of power like no family before and after them. They didn't just rule Florence, they transformed it into their personal work of art, infusing every stone, every painting, and every financial transaction with their indelible mark.
They created what one might describe as the biggest, baddest, hardest currency of all. The currency of art itself, a lasting legacy far more enduring than gold.
It's also fascinating to note that even today, modern-day family members such as Prince Lorenzo de' Medici still speak of upholding this enduring legacy, emphasizing vision, forward-thinking, philanthropy, and the crucial role of using wealth for the prosperity of your community and the state. A direct, powerful echo of Cosimo the Elder's strategic and visionary approach to power and public good.
What an extraordinary deep dive into the Medici. From their origins as humble wool merchants navigating the moral perils of usury to becoming the godfathers of the Renaissance, who transformed Florence into an unparalleled cultural powerhouse, they wielded power through shrewd banking, calculated political maneuvering, and an unparalleled patronage of the arts that quite literally reshaped Europe.
We've seen how their ambition, their innovations in finance, and their willingness to push boundaries, even religious ones, inadvertently sparking the Reformation, left an indelible mark that resonates centuries later, influencing the very fabric of our modern world.
Absolutely. Think about how the very concepts of modern banking, the way art is valued and collected today in museums, or even the subtle strategic dance of power behind a public facade, all these were profoundly influenced by this one extraordinary family.
Their story is a masterclass in how influence, whether intentionally applied through grand patronage or with unforeseen, even catastrophic consequences like the Reformation, can ripple through centuries, impacting everything from your personal bank statement to the masterpieces you marvel at in museums around the world.
The Medici taught us that power, whether financial, political, or cultural, isn't just about accumulating wealth. It's about strategically shaping the world around you, sometimes with deliberate long-term vision, and sometimes with profound, often unpredictable results that no one could foresee.
A constant interplay between ambition and consequence.
Exactly. Their life and legacy were a constant interplay between immense ambition and its far-reaching, often astonishing outcomes. So as you reflect on their truly magnificent and complicated story, what aspect of their masterpiece do you find most striking? What part of their enduring influence do you think we still feel most keenly today?